Hi, I'm Jonathan Treussard, and welcome to Treussard Talks, where we talk about the mechanics of investing, the psychology of investing, and what it means to manage your wealth with purpose. Because understanding your wealth shouldn't be as complex as building it. Welcome to today's show. Anna Paglia, I am so grateful you're on the show. We're going to get into your extensive history in finance as a business leader. But before we get there, I just want to recall how we met. We met when I walked into a conference room in Chicago in what could have been a relatively loaded conversation. Our two companies had a difference of opinion. And the first thing that I noticed about you is what a win-win type of person you were. You were seeking a solution, something that worked for everyone from the moment we met, which I think is an extraordinary quality. And I can't wait to kind of get into your business philosophy and how certainly I experienced it from the start. Before we do, can you take us back to the beginning and your path into this field of finance, your family history, the things that have kind of shaped you along the way?
Thank you for having me, Jonathan. It's always really good to see you. So my history has not been linear. If somebody told me 30 years ago that I would be here today, I wouldn't be able to believe it because it is so different from what I expected I was going to do as an adult or from what I thought my possibilities and my opportunities were going to be. I'm an attorney by trade. So I studied law. I went to law school. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I cannot tell you why, but I always wanted to be a lawyer. So when I finished law school, I joined a law firm in Italy. And I was very passionate about intellectual property laws, copyrights, and I felt blessed because I was able to join the entertainment department of a law firm. Now, you don't expect that, but for example, if you have a singer going on tour, you wouldn't believe how many contracts and how many legal things you have to do for somebody to be on tour. That's what I was doing. And I thought I had made it. I thought that was the best job in the world. And then it was 1998, and that's when the European Union approved the UCITS directive, making it possible to have mutual funds passported into different member states. And my boss, being a very smart person, decided to start an investment management division. I was told, I wasn't asked, I was told to move from the entertainment group to the investment management division. And Jonathan, I thought my life was over. I thought my career was over. It was a horrible development. I didn't know what to do. And
not what you wanted.
Not what I wanted. No, I need to plan. And that was definitely unplanned. So little did I know I was about to find my true love and my passion for finance, for the investment management world, asset management. And now my mom and dad, they are school teachers. So in the Paglia household, we would always get to the end of the month. But it was not a wealthy household. It was not one of those households with family money where you have an investment advisor, when your parents have dinner conversations around financial markets and portfolios. So the more work I was doing, the more it was clear to me that, my family never stood a chance. Now, think back at the environment and the industry as it was 30 years ago. If you wanted to buy investments in a mutual fund, at the time, you needed to have a minimum investment of $15,000. Well, guess what? My dad would make $10,000 a year. So forget about buying a mutual fund. Hedge funds, you needed $250,000. So that's even more remote from the opportunities of a middle class or lower class family.
Not even on the menu.
Not even on the menu. I mean, it was a menu at a different restaurant. You were not even admitted in that restaurant. So when I came across ETFs, that sparked a light bulb, because now you have an instrument that allows you to be in a market with as little as $25. I thought it was a revolution. I thought that was the instrument to bridge the wealth gap. And even at that time, it became really clear that the process and the game was tilted. I honestly didn't know if I could have had any influence in that, but all I knew was that I was going to use whatever time, whatever resources, whatever passion I had to tilt that framework and to make sure that wealth gap was bridged for families like my family, for people like my father.
It's an incredible story, and I should have introduced you more completely professionally so that people understand when you just said, I was going to use whatever time, whatever skill set you have to make an impact. Today, you are the Chief Business Officer, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
At State Street, do you want to give our listeners just a sense of scale of what that means and the influence that you now have an opportunity to actually have, not only on the industry of asset management, but again, the reality for everyone in engaging with capital markets?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for mentioning it. So State Street is the fourth largest asset manager in the world. We have about $4.7 trillion in assets, and our platform is divided across ETFs, cash, and then retirement. We are the second largest administrator and manager of retirement assets in the US, and we care very much about the type of services that we provide to clients. The way we look at that is we want to be an investor best friend. We want to be an essential partner for our clients, helping them throughout their entire investment journey, starting with the early days of investment, creation of wealth, so using cash, using ETFs to build their wealth, through the accumulation, which is a saving for retirement and giving people tools to accumulate wealth throughout their retirement, and then coming back to wealth. Once you cash out on your 401k or IRAs, that portfolio now needs to continue to grow because it's going to have to help you during your retirement years. So our mission is really to be there to help our investors throughout their entire journey. We interact with wealth advisors, institutional investors, retail investors globally. So it is definitely a privilege to be here, and it's great to see how this industry has been evolving.
So let me just repeat what you just said for emphasis. The Italian daughter of school teachers is now in the highest echelon of leadership at a $4 trillion asset manager. And you're doing it from a place of mission, from a place of wanting to make a difference. I think that's absolutely extraordinary. I know none of that came easy to you. Obviously, you described the non-linear path and sometimes feeling like decisions were made on your behalf, even though I sincerely believe that it takes a huge amount of agency to actually achieve what you've achieved to date. I can only imagine that it's taken mentors and advocates and people guiding you along the way. I'd love to hear about anybody in your life that's helped you get to where you are, and equally the type of skills and the philosophy that has guided you on this journey, particularly as a woman rising through leadership in what we know is historically fairly male-dominated field.
Oh, Jonathan, yes, there is a lot to unpack in that question. Starting with what you say about mentorship. I think it's incredible that you have structured mentorship programs in the industry, in trade groups, into companies where people really set up time to help the younger generation, to help younger professionals find their way into the industry and into the corporations. It has not always been this way. 3 decades ago, 2 decades ago, you had people that you could rely on, but we didn't call them mentors. There was no such thing as mentors. But the funny thing is that you know good when you see it. And when you see good, what you need to do is try to repeat it. Because throughout my career, I had good colleagues and bad colleagues, good bosses and bad bosses, good friends and bad friends. Whenever you see good, try to repeat it. Structured mentors have been people with a mission to mentor me and help me, but they have also been people that didn't call themselves mentors. If I think about the biggest mentor in my career, is the owner of a restaurant in Rome where I used to serve tables when I was in law school. Because obviously I had to pay my rent, so I was going to school, I was working, and then I was serving tables at night. And I remember one night there was a big chaos in the kitchen. And next thing you know, the head chef left the kitchen and ran away. And then the owner of the restaurant came to me and he said, "Anna, go to the kitchen. You are the chef tonight." And I was scared like you wouldn't believe. My rent was $350 a month. And that job gave me around $300 a month. So it was incredibly important for me. And I thought, I'm going to lose my job today. As a matter of fact, I was a horrible chef. People were complaining. The food was coming back in the kitchen. At the end of service, I thought, this is it. I'm going to have to find another job. But I sat down with the owner of the restaurant and he gave me a check for $500. And I was shocked. I didn't know what was happening. And he said, "Anna, I hope that tonight you learn one thing or two." So the first thing is everybody's helpful, nobody's irreplaceable. And the chef was rude to the staff. He did not fit into our culture. He was being disrespectful and disruptive. And I had to make a hard decision. And I decided for the sake of everybody else that I wanted to let him go. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, in a time of crisis, you have to think quick on your feet. I had a decision to make. Do I want to close the restaurant or do I want to leave it open with less quality of service? And I decided my priority is to keep the restaurant open. Lesson number three is if you detect that you are in a time of crisis and somebody asks you to do something, you do it. I came to you, I said, go to the kitchen. You didn't complain. You just did it because you realized that this is what I needed at that moment. And then he also said something that is really Italian, which is, and you need to know your chickens. Because we know that I needed really strong servers to deal with disgruntled customers. And let's face it, you are not that good a server. So I was the one who would go in the kitchen. So to me, I remember this as if it was yesterday. Because it really left a mark. It taught me lessons that I'm just living and breathing every day when I manage people, when I deal with clients, or even when I push myself to do better every day.
There's so much there. And you're fundamentally right about the value of that experience, the recognition that sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And having a toxic chef from a culture standpoint may not be worth it, even if it means having substantial disruption on your hands when you decide to deal with it. And I think that's something that, as you know, Katie shared, my former boss at Research Affiliates, and I spent so much time on the idea of a healthy corporate culture. Yeah. The other part, which I think is something that we can help the next generation have an intuition for, but the truth is you don't really get it until it happens to you and you happen to make the right decision. But when there is a moment of crisis, when there is a crunch time, just do it. Just go for it. And the person asking you to jump in is fully aware, hopefully, of the circumstances. These are not ideal circumstances, but they're making an educated decision and they're giving you a shot. And I think it's something that we all need to convey to the next generation. You know, an example that just came to mind as you were describing this incredible experience is we've all been in the situation as professionals where sometimes we've had to go into the office on Sunday because something just happened, and on Monday at 8, we had to be ready for it. And you have to be able to recognize that is sometimes what is necessary without tipping into a culture where, hey, I'm expecting you to be in the office every Sunday, which is unhealthy. And so this concept of do it, jump in, and you'll be rewarded for it is incredibly important.
Of course. And you touched on something that is also really important, and that is sacrifice. Nothing is easy. What I got from my dad has always been, don't expect anybody to give you anything. Make sure that you are in the driver's seat when it comes to your future, your career, your financial independence. Don't rely on anybody. Try to do whatever you need to do to be in the driver's seat and have a complete ownership and power over your future and over your decisions. That takes sacrifice. And when you think about career progression, when you think about how far you have come, it's easy to see the flashy things. What is not easy is to look at the sacrifices. Somebody asked me, if you were to go back to your young self, what would you tell her? I had to think about it a little, but I would tell my younger self, it is all worth it. This is the one question that I always ask myself. Whenever I had to work weekends, whenever I had to skip family events or travel and be away from my family, or even when I decided to invest all of my savings for a master's degree in the US, I would make these decisions and then always tell myself, oh my goodness, I hope it's all worth it. I hope it's all worth it. In the end, it is worth it. If you put your mind into something, if you work really, really hard, if you make sacrifices, it is all worth it. But you have to go into that with the eyes wide open, because a mismatch between the energy that you put in and the expectations is what makes people disappointed. So you have to be very pragmatic. There are so many people who come to work who want a career, but only put in the efforts for a job. And there is a very big difference between having a job and having a career. And I'm not saying one is good and one is bad. Having a job is great. If you want to come to work at 9, go home at 5, shut down your computer and your phone and not listen to anybody, that's great. We need people like that. The industry needs people like that. But if you want a career, that's very different. There is no 9 to 5. There is no limit to the amount of energy and efforts and commitments that you have to put into that. So the first thing that you have to ask yourself is, do I want a job or do I want a career?
Yeah, and I think there's something to that importantly, which is, as you said, for some people, the job path is the right path. The career path requires more effort and energy, but I think what makes it all possible certainly I reflect on myself, but I know this is true about you, is it becomes a mission. If the drive is more than the job, where the drive is more honestly than the money, where you're trying to solve something that you think is important, then all of that, as you said, becomes worth it. I think that's the thing, which is, I always talk about the concept of meaning. Mm-hmm. And I think the point is, can you find deep meaning that has nothing to do with the external world? Can you find deep meaning in what you do? And if you do, then you have staying power that honestly, a vast majority of the people that you're going to be competing with, the people that you're going to be working with, just don't have the same lasting power, the same grit.
That's right. I keep saying the same thing. You said the word meaning. I always tell people, what's your purpose? Which is exactly the same thing. Are you working with purpose? Are you working with passion? Are you doing something that makes you happy, something that you believe in? Because if the answer is yes, those extra hours are all going to be worth it. They are not going to be a big weight to carry on your shoulders. But you are going to have to be very thoughtful and very deliberate about it. I am the luckiest person in the world. I wake up every day, I come to work, and I do a job that I absolutely love with the people that I adore, because I think that they are the most incredible professionals in this industry. And this is something that I would do even if nobody paid me to do that. So please don't tell my boss, but that's the truth. I absolutely love this industry and I love what I do. I always tell people, find your purpose. Find your passion. Find that one thing that makes you happy. And then if you can build a career out of it, it's going to be easier than you could ever imagine.
Thanks for listening. I'm Jonathan Treussard, founder of Treussard Capital Management. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you'd like to start receiving my free newsletter, Wealth Empowered, or if you'd like to learn more about me and Treussard Capital Management, go to Treussard.com. That's TREUSSARD.com. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the episode. So, one of the things that I know you find purpose and meaning in is talking about the availability of investment options through the ETF wrapper, as you said. I think there is confusion. I mean, we're 30 plus years into this ETF revolution, and I still think that for the person on the street, the idea of what's an ETF, how does that relate to what people understand to be a mutual fund? All that's very confusing. So can you talk very briefly about what are the fundamental mechanics of ETFs and ETF investing, and why do you think that plays such an important role in creating the types of investment outcomes that I think you're trying to encourage?
Yes, I look at ETFs as a combination of two things: content and technology. The ETF wrapper is the technology that carries the content. The technology is really powerful because it's a mutual fund that trades like a stock. What it means is that if you have a trading account, if you have an advisor and a brokerage account, and you can buy stocks, now you can buy ETFs. Now, we all know that the world of investing can be a little scary, because if somebody is not really familiar with financial markets, picking and choosing the stocks for your portfolio can be a very scary thing. What ETFs bring to this conversation is the power of diversification. Because now, with just one trade, you can get exposure to a basket of securities. And you can do that by just buying one share of an ETF. So to me, ETFs carry everything that I like about the financial markets. They give you exposure in a way that is cost effective. It's tax efficient, especially in the US. You can do it from your phone. You can buy ETFs either if you are managing your portfolio by yourself, or if you are working with a financial advisor, because I am pretty sure that everyone who works with a financial advisor will find ETFs in their portfolios. And it doesn't require a significant amount of investments. Most ETFs can sell you one stock for $25. So that makes you an investor. It reminds me, I don't know if you remember, there was a Nike commercial, Nike marketing tagline from a few years back that said something along, if you have a body, you are an athlete. What I always think about ETFs, which is if you have $25, you are an investor. You just need to have a few dollars for your weekly coffee allowance, and here you go. You are in market. You are officially an investor.
And the moment you learn that you're part of this conversation, that you're an owner, that you're building wealth and you have a stake in the system, then it just gives meaning to getting up in the morning. You said something that I want to hit on. You said markets are scary and investing is scary. And whenever I talk about investing, I really talk about three things. I talk about the mechanics of investing, I talk about the psychology of investing, and I talk about the purpose of investing. The psychology, the thing about markets are scary, and I say your brain on money is a mess. It's just so impossible to stay rational, to stay objective when this bizarre thing called money is involved. You're literally sitting on top of an institution that manages, as you said, trillions of dollars, including retirement accounts, which, are mission critical for a lot of people. When you think about where psychological biases, when kind of quirks of psychology come in, what makes the top of your list?
First of all, moving away from the fear of financial markets. My mom and my dad, they retired a few years ago. In Italy, when you retire, they give you a check, which pretty much you don't have a 401k plan in Italy, but you get this big check from your company that is the money that you have accumulated for your retirement throughout your journey, which is not a big one. My mom was waiting for this for 40 years and ultimately she got something like $38,000. She was incredibly scared because she had never seen so much money in her life. And now what am I going to do with that? I cannot invest it myself. So yes, financial markets can be scary. But guess what? You don't have to do it yourself. So the first thing I told her was, go find yourself a financial advisor. You are not going to be the one studying financial markets and looking at a company's fundamentals, trying to decipher what's happening with interest rates. Find yourself a financial advisor, which is what she did. And then ever since she opened a brokerage account, she has been watching all the market movements. I don't know if you remember 2022 markets were crashing. And
I certainly do.
I got a FaceTime call and it was a group of my dad and his friends between 70 and 80 years old. It was a very funny vision to see on my phone. And they were like, Anna, what's going on? Can't you go talk to NASDAQ about it? Yes, of course. Thank you for the vote of confidence, but that's not how it works. So make sure that you don't react based on what happens in market with the latest news. Especially in this day and age, if we all went to bed on December 31st of last year, and we woke up this morning, we would look at the S&P 500 and we would go like, oh, well, nothing really has happened in the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. But in reality, it has been a roller coaster. Trade wars.
I feel a little tired myself.
Exactly, just thinking about it. So you also have to detach yourself a little bit from the day-ins and day-outs and the roller coaster of financial markets. You always have to think about the big picture. Think about the health of the market. Think about your objectives and your time horizon. So be very pragmatic and unemotional. And this is really hard because when it comes to money, when it comes to managing your finances, it's really hard not to be emotional. Your portfolio is growing, you are going to be super happy. Your portfolio is decreasing in value, it's going to be really hard because it means hard decisions are coming your way. So it's hard to tell people not to be emotional. But that's what you have to do. Work with an expert, remove the bias, and remove the emotions.
Yeah, and certainly for people like us, investment professionals, we know this. And yet, our job is to be on the roller coaster. We don't get to close our eyes. It seems to me like taking a nap for the last 6 months would have been a pretty good deal. One of the things that I do, I go back to these sayings because they just help you keep your head on right when the roller coaster gets a little exciting. One of the things that I keep repeating to myself and to people around me is, don't just do something, sit there. And we're all driven to action. We all want to react. It gives us a sense of control, perhaps a misconceived sense of agency over outcomes, when sometimes doing nothing is the answer. And I know I have to deal with that kinetic energy because it's my job. It's the job I chose. And by the way, I feel very mission driven about it. I write a newsletter, I'm active on LinkedIn. And the reason I write as much as I do is because it's a healthier outlet than having all this kinetic energy drive me to do things that are ultimately possibly self-harm from a financial standpoint when it comes to trading and touching portfolios too much. So I think it's important to recognize, hey, this thing is real. It affects everybody. No one is perfectly rational in the face of the circus. And the best thing we can do is use that energy in a constructive, productive manner. That certainly is the way I go about it.
Yeah, and you said something that is also really important, which is sometimes doing nothing is the best action that you can take. Because we are always moved towards activity, control, empowerment. Do something about it. You are not happy with the outcome. Do something about it. But inaction is not doing nothing. Even when you do nothing, that is always part of a very thoughtful decision-making process. So even doing nothing means you are doing something for your portfolio.
That's exactly right. I think about purpose. I read a story that you shared on LinkedIn a few months ago about your grandmothers and how they inspired purpose in you. I'd love for you to share the story of your grandmothers again, if you're willing. But I want to go back to this. I know you're incredibly passionate about financial literacy. And in fact, you and I are both involved with WISE, Women Investing in Security and Education, a wonderful nonprofit that is meant to educate and empower women of all backgrounds with more financial knowledge, education. Let's go back to this concept of purpose and perhaps where it comes from for you.
Definitely. So I wrote that story March 8th, so International Women's Day. And I wrote the story because I sat down and I thought, who are the women that so far have had the biggest impact in my life, but also in my career, in the way I look at the world? And reflecting on that, I thought about my grandmothers because they were incredibly different. My mom's mom, she was born to be a wife and a mother. She knew that. She played that role really, really well. And we all knew that. Nonna Italia, oh my gosh, she was the happiest person in the world. She was always ready with candy, with food, with laughter, with dance, with music. She was a little bit of a servant to all the men in her life, whether it was my grandpa, whether it was my uncles. She was always serving them at the table and cleaning after them. And she was never allowed to talk because every time she tried to participate in, let's call them adult conversations, she was always shut down. I remember my grandpa being very abrupt and saying, shut up, you are ignorant. She didn't finish school. She didn't go to elementary school. She started working in the fields when she was 11 years old. So my grandpa would just look at her and say, you are ignorant. You shouldn't talk. And if anybody said that to me right now, I don't know what I would do, Jonathan. But my grandma, she just took it for granted. She didn't take offense because it was just a statement of facts. So for her, hearing those words was not an offense. And she was just happy. She was happy being a grandma. She was happy being a mother. She was happy being a wife. Now, what I learned from her is really, happiness is a state of mind. I don't know what makes people happy. Whatever makes you happy, embrace it. There are no rules. My grandma died really young and I still miss her. I was 13 years old when she passed away and she left a big hole in my heart. But she was the happiest person I've ever met. My other grandma, she was the complete opposite. She was a force of nature. She was a lioness. She defied convention. She defied community. She went against her family when she decided to marry my grandpa. She had nothing. When they got married, they had no money. They had nothing. They had a cow, and that's how they got by. They were selling milk to friends and neighbors. And she worked so hard that in the end, they built a little business. The business became a little bigger. They started buying real estate. And she worked until the day she died. She died when she was 93 years old, and she was fighting fierce until her last breath. And she was a pain in the neck to everybody. Nobody liked her. Nobody liked her because she was a pain in the neck. She never had anything good to say about anybody because nobody lived up to her expectations. I would come back from school with a B plus, and she would be like, "Why is that not an A plus?" So nobody was always doing enough according to her book. And you know what? She taught me a lot. She really taught me, again, nobody's going to give you anything. Everything she did, everything she built together with my grandpa, they did it with the sweat and the tears, and they managed to go from 0 to 100 just relying on their own talent, their own capabilities, the hours that they put into the work. So this is like, growing up in an environment in which your experience is split between two very different worlds. Everybody talks about diversity of thought today as being a new thing. I think it's great that we spend so much time being so deliberate about diversity of thought, because you don't grow unless you are exposed to many different ways of engaging with people, engaging with your colleagues, with your family, with your friends, but also the different ways by which you can build a future for yourself.
Yeah, it's find your own path and find your own path to joy. It sounds like what your first grandmother taught you. And the other part of it, which certainly resonates with me, is you're never too good. Everything's always on the table for you to take care of. And I think one is it gives you drive and discipline, but the other part of it too is it gives you empathy for the people around you who are still building up. I'm incredibly grateful that you're sharing as much as you are about your family. It resonates with me in such a deep way. Both of my grandfathers, my mother's father and my father's father, were farm boys. And to think that in 3 generations, we went from literally working the land to my mother being a public educator, a school teacher, and then a principal, professionals. This journey is literally unbelievable that I would be a PhD economist, an investment professional, someone who actually gets to have the types of conversations we're having today and hopefully make a mark for the better. And I love that we get to acknowledge the people that came before us. And actually, we should be grateful that they weren't necessarily well off. There's value in that evolution. And I certainly hope that more people experience it. When you think about the bleeding edge of the financial services and ETFs and asset management over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, what excites you the most? And I would like equally to hear what scares you the most.
Okay, let's start with what excites me the most. What excites me the most is the ongoing process of democratization. And, you're going to hear me saying this word over and over again, because to me, this is where everything started and this is where everything is going to end. The next frontier to democratize is private markets. This is what asset managers are doing now, and I believe that in the next 5 years, private markets are going to become just like bonds, senior loans. They are going to be highly liquid, the pricing is going to be very transparent, and people will be able to buy those assets as part of their portfolio allocation. So to me, the continuous evolution of this industry is something that makes me really excited. Now, the scary part. The scary part is technology. The scary part is access is becoming so easy, and social media are taking over. Now you have something called influencers. So people are taking financial advice from Reddit, from X, from social media, and you never know who is providing financial advice and what type of financial advice. The issue with GameStop, I think it's something that people are going to start studying at school, which is to have a group of people who are now creating hypes and driving prices on publicly traded stocks in a way that is very disconnected from fundamentals. So to me, that is scary. And the way to take the fear away is from people like ourselves, other asset managers like yourself, to get into the conversation so that we can really provide information that is grounded in reality, information that is grounded in facts, and people can make informed decisions that are not just made to follow a certain trend or to listen to a number of influencers.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. Your fear aligns with my fear, which is what in the ideal state is the wisdom of the crowd. In the normal world of behavioral finance, the fact that people are irrational, we often move from the wisdom of the crowd to the madness of the crowd, of course, being the fact that people kind of talk themselves into frenzies and we end up with massive bubbles and disruptions. And a bubble isn't just bad because we don't like it. A bubble is bad because it has real implications on the way capital flows. That's the people that care about how markets operate. But more fundamentally, people lose money. A bubble is de facto a wealth redistribution mechanism from the influenced to the influencers. But the thing that really scares me, and I think that's what you're saying, is forget the madness of the crowd. The one that's really frightening is the madness of the mob, where the mob is really, it's not a disorganized crowd, it's an organized crowd that has a purpose, that has something in mind that they're trying to achieve. And I think, we see it in markets, we see it outside of markets, in our public sphere, and it's very frightening. I agree with you. So we've had this incredible conversation and one that's been very personal. And yet I have a few more personal questions on the way out, as I ask all my guests a series of questions that is derived from a literary show that was on French TV when I was a kid, hosted by Bernard Pivot. And the same questions were used on American TV by James Lipton at the Actors Studio. Are you ready for a series of kind of rapid fire questions?
I'm scared now, but let's go. Let's do it.
What is your favorite word?
Oh, it's the F word.
What is your least favorite word?
The F word.
Okay. What is your favorite drug?
Adrenaline.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of my kids' voices.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh, my dog barking at my husband. She hates my husband.
Well, the next question was going to be, what is your favorite curse word? But I think we've covered that.
Yes, plenty.
Who would you like to see on a new banknote?
That's interesting. I don't think I want to see a person on a banknote. I need to think about that.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you not want to attempt?
I wouldn't want to be a reporter. I think information is so powerful, and it is just as powerful as it's needed to be unbiased. And I have too many opinions, so I could never be a reporter.
Being self-aware is important. I have a good friend who's an ER doctor, and I often say to him, I could never do what you do, never mind the fact that I'll probably pass out at the sight of blood. But people would come in and say, what'd you do to yourself? Which I think is not helpful. If you were reincarnated as a plant or an animal, what would it be?
I would love to be my dog, reincarnated as my dog. Oh, she has the best life ever.
But would you get along with your husband then?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
All right. Last question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive?
So heaven does exist. And when I arrive, God will say, I like what you did down there. Welcome here. Welcome home.
Well, there's a lot in what you do to like. We should all be grateful that people like you are in positions of authority and in positions of leadership in our industry. And so it's been an incredible joy and honor to have you on the show today. Thank you, Anna Paglia.
Thank you, Jonathan. It was so great to talk to you and to see you.
This podcast is for entertainment and education only. Nothing here is financial advice. Treussard Capital Management is a registered investment advisor. Please visit our website, w.treussard.com, for additional information and disclaimers.